All right. On today's episode, we interviewed Nick Heye, where we talked a lot about what it looks like to, hop straight into a franchise, right? Not only did he hop straight into it, it was really an early franchise where the franchisor, was really just getting started and he was franchisee number four. And we kind of talked about the ups and downs and specifically, right? He was in the pressure washing and commercial cleaning business. So, Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, when you meet somebody that seems like they're having fun, even though they're mixed with a ton of challenges. I mean, Nick is having fun. He's a competitor. You can tell.
Yeah.
He wants to compete. He wants to be great. He wants to go to work. He does not mind putting in the hard work, and he's pretty damn honest. So I'll tell you, man, I think that's a pretty cool franchise.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty cool concept, and what a great way to build something, buy territories, and hopefully make a lot of money.
No, he kind of talks about it, right? I mean, he enjoys the thrill of the competition. He doesn't want to waste his time picking a logo, getting a website up, right? All the stuff that the franchisor handles for them. And so again, I mean, we kind of talked about it during the rock around. I mean, he spends his Thursdays playing competitive games and kind of shows in the business that he's building, right?
And this is a competitive game. We are playing a competitive game. It's a perfect place. Yeah. And so, man, I think this podcast was great.
All right, perfect. Let's get started.
All right, guys, just take 1 second here real quick. When you're buying a business, ensuring the financial health of the company is critical. And that's where a quality of earnings partner comes in. Quality of earnings gives you confidence in the financials of the company that you're purchasing. It aims to protect your investment and ensure that you're stepping into a profitable business on day one. Patrick of O'Connell Advisory Group is your dynamic quality of earnings partner. He's here to help you buy the right business on your timeline. Patrick's entire practice is focused on business acquisitions. Your niche is his niche. And over the past decade, Patrick's helped more than 200 buyers like yourself successfully purchase and operate enduring, profitable businesses. In fact, Patrick's helped some listeners of this show. So if you're buying, looking for help with the quality of earnings, financial due diligence, network capital, and more, head to o'connelladvisorygroup.com or just click the link in the show notes.
Hey, Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
You bet, man. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm 34, living in Old Town Alexandria, just outside of DC. I've owned a couple of businesses, started in high-end personal finance, but my first job ever was cold calling. And then I later went and got into product distribution and had a business setup that was very similar to franchise. And then I ended up doing a search, looking for a business to buy or a franchise to start. And I settled on a company called Rolling Suds. And about 17 months in or so.
All right.
Very exciting.
So really quick, let's unpack that a little bit. So you mentioned product distribution. Was that a business you just worked at, a business that you co-owned, or what was the background there and what led you to go off and do the search?
Yeah, so it operated under, it was called Jobber and was the part of the law, but it basically made a segment of their business yours, and you got basically 1099 into it. But basically what it meant is that I had a overarching brand in front of me, and then I had a territory that was my own with expectations. And if I was to be bought out or had to get out, I would get everything I put in and the equipment and whatever reserve revenues were coming back. So operated a little bit like myself and my own, but it was not completely my own, but had an exit from that.
Got it. And it sounds almost like a franchise, right? So.
And that's how I ended up in franchise.
Yeah. And so, I guess, what didn't you like about that model, and what led you to want to start searching for something else?
The time had come between me and the overarching larger network. It was in an industry I didn't love, never really wanted to be in it that long. It was one of those situations where you're just making a decent amount of money and you're not really sure when you should leave. And it just became time. It was time to go. I was mentally hooked. I didn't have much left. It exhausted me to an extent, just waking up and going. So I wanted to try something different. But I honestly feel that way about almost everything. I probably have about 10 years in me before I have an itch to just start something, break something new, whatever it is.
There you go. Well, that's the entrepreneur in you, right? We a lot of us have a short attention span, excited for a period of time. We have the discipline to sustain through. And then once it's stabilized and it's rolling, it's like, hey, what's next? And that's kind of how we start to think about life.
Yeah. And there's something exciting about meeting new people all the time and getting out of an old regiment that I really enjoy. And then also just tackling something that I have no understanding of. just getting it wrong until I get it right is kind of the
Yeah.
Oh, I
concept
love
there.
that.
So you decided to leave that business and go do something really easy, right? Go do a search or a franchise. And so
Yeah.
I think that's going to be part of the themes of this podcast. But walk us through the search. How'd that unfold, and ultimately, how'd you end up landing on the franchise?
Yeah, so I started off, I was like, all right, cool, let's take some time to like mentally come back down to earth and find out where I am emotionally so I don't make a rash decision. So kind of just took a month or so off, walked my dog a lot, and then started talking to brokers, found a lot of them off of Twitter, and started to figure out how buy and sell worked of older businesses. Everyone talks about the silver tsunami all the time. And so we're starting to get to the edge of that if it doesn't indeed exist. So I started talking and I started to figure out the downside risk of it was outrageous without a lot of capital. So you could go through due diligence and spend $500,000 and it might not even work out past that. So that's slightly out of the risk tolerance that I wanted to go after. I also am younger and I look younger. And so I think that me going into someone else's business would have been a significant challenge. There's a reality that exists in life, and how you present yourself and what you look like still unfortunately matters. So I think that would have been a challenge. And I also realized that I thrived under a certain type of system. And one of them was very limited support where I don't have to do the little nitty-gritty things that I'm not obsessed with. Like I don't really want to pick out a logo. I don't really want to find out what the car wrap looks like. I don't particularly care about those points, but I do love like the buy and sell and finding new customers and doing all that kind of stuff. So went through a lot of franchise brands. My heart was set on boutique finance boutique fitness. I was a big Orange Theory guy for about 5 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. And then I ended up just meeting Aaron Harper with Rolling Suds and kind of liked how the model worked and felt like it was time to go.
There's a lot of good stuff there. I will tell you that, I also went through the franchise experience multiple times. My wife ended up doing a franchise for about 4 years before she took it. She did what she was doing was there. So the allure of a franchise, right? It has the system already built, right? It has hopefully some market share where it tells you where to do your business at. It gives you a lot of that and some brand recognition, right? But then there's also some other sides to it, which, you give up a royalty, right? So there's a royalty off the top of your revenue. There is some say with things that you do. So there are some trade-offs in that franchise. So what have you liked about the franchise and what do you not like about the franchise? And you said nothing's off limits. So
no, yeah, go for it.
I had to ask.
Yeah, hit me, man. I'll tell you the truth. So I think franchising is very interesting. I met a bunch of friends flying around to different discovery days. I still talk to almost all of them. About 3 of them have sued their franchisor and have gotten out of what they were doing. And then the other 2 are thriving and doing very well in their system. I think it's such an interesting choice getting into it. And how these franchisors act is so interesting because almost all of them will have something wrong if it's brand new. And how they react and how they fix it is what is most important in my mind. I've had a huge influence over our franchise, if we're being very frank. I was the 4th franchisee in the system. I'm currently president of our advisory committee. So I represent all of our franchisees to the board and kind of argue our stance for them the best that I can. And the interesting part about that is since I'm the first one, I have to play this weird middle ground all the time, not to rock the boat, but still get things done. And so it's interesting watching how franchisors work and where they're good and they're bad. And so the positive of what ours has been is we've been extremely flexible when things have gone wrong and we've grown a little too fast. We have a great sales funnel at the front, Rolling Suds, but we broke fundamentally in the spring. We just did. And I had to I held an all hands on meeting and we kind of cleared the air, got everything fixed up, and now we're back into full growth mode. But it is interesting watching something grow so dang fast and then just watch it break. So that's been the hardest dealing with that.
It sounds like so in your experience, not only are you a franchisee, you really are a part of the early stage of a franchise, right? So you're kind of playing dual roles, right? Not only am I a part of the system, but I also want to help guide the system so I have a business flourishing 5-10 years down the road, right?
Yeah, and so that's what I'm really looking at is like I'm thinking about it as my long-term investment. How can I slightly push us into the correct direction? I do not work for the franchisor. I need them to succeed at the end of the day. They are all great people who work very, very hard. We just had some people in it who, either needed more power or less power, more resources, less resources. Some systems that we had working in the beginning that worked for me absolutely did not work once we scaled. Like, not at all. It looked terrible. And we cleaned it up. And to the franchisor's credit, they accepted that and they didn't have to. They could have told you you're out of luck, but we made some awesome hires, cleaned stuff up that just didn't work for the new franchisees. And we're constantly doing that. We're even looking at a new CRM, even though we changed last year. We're just part of growth. It's really, really hard. I don't mind them leaning on me and the other people on our board, our advisory committee to do that. It's great that they asked that. But that's part of the fun of being, the fourth person in something that you don't really know what it's going to be,
Yeah. So question, just for our listeners, right? What does Rolling Suds do, right, as a company, right? Because I think people, Suds is very loose for interpretation.
Yeah.
And then in addition for that, right, what is the franchisor actually giving you? Right. What are the valuable things that they're adding for you? Right. Especially whenever you're number four. I mean, what made you decide, hey, I'm going to latch my wagon with them versus try to start my own, from scratch?
Totally fair. So Rolling Suds is a power washing and exterior cleaning company. And our primary focus is the mid and upper market of cleaning things. So think about the condominium that has 10 buildings in it, like 4 sets of apartments, and then there's 10 of those, or like a 7-story tall building. Our expertise is cleaning those things. And really what Rolling Suds is bringing to the game is capacity and a brand. We're entering in a space where there are a lot of competitors, but more often than not, they're not using soap, or they don't quite have the equipment to tackle very large jobs. It's one of those spaces where people do not invest their money to an extent that you might think for what is required. And that's really what Rolling Suds is bringing the best equipment we can think of and a lot of capacity. So all my trucks are big, giant F550 box trucks, 900 gallons of water at a time. And so that we're able to do that. And at the same time, we still service the lower end businesses. And in fact, I view them as vital to our company. And I kind of tell everybody as such, but yeah, that's our primary focus is that upper to middle tier market commercial side.
And is there a style that you guys are cleaning in a different way instead of like just the guy that did, like, for instance, we always have somebody come out and pressure wash our driveway and our house and do all that stuff once a year. And it's that, usually have like a little, like there's equipment, but it seems like when you start getting commercial, there's even some serious equipment, right? So are you guys rolling out like things that can knock it out real quick? Driveways are like done in half the time as because when you think pressure washing, right? You think of somebody with a pressure washer spraying. And I imagine, yes, that still exists, but then there's
that's true. So like a lot of what the difference is I tell people my job is not all that different than mowing your lawn. You can do it if you want. It still takes you a lot of time and you got to do it when it's 90 degrees out. What we really have is equipment that can both soft wash and power wash. So that means our equipment can chemically spray and it can also power wash. And yet we can do a driveway that would probably take you all of Sunday and you'd still be a little disappointed in it.
Yep.
In about 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's cheating. It really is. And so I am rapidly gaining market share on cleaning parking garages. And I've been asked to kind of slow down like how good we're doing because the drains can't quite keep up. And so I've like came up with new ideas on how to pull up soot and stuff that was been sitting in those garages for 30 years. But it really is one of those businesses that all of a sudden everyone knows you and they're like, wait, you can do that? Are you serious? And you'll do it for how much? And I'm below market pricing. I'm here to gain market share and friends and nothing else. The margins will come. There's a day for that.
So are you going to get into like interior? Like, so for instance, we have a chrome plating facility. Okay. So Feras and I acquired that last year, 170,000 square feet, and the floors are awful. Like we have always walked around going, man, it would be awesome to clean this stuff. Now that's commercial stuff, right? But is that, I'm not commercial, but that's industrial cleaning internally. Is that something you see yourself venturing into?
Yeah,
that stuff's great.
Especially if we can figure out, and that's the So we were talking about, and I don't think I quite answered, but we were talking about like what the value of a
Yeah.
franchise is, right? Is you guys, I have been going since the middle of March until about a week ago, at least 10 hours a day. Most of them are 15 hours a day. It's a lot. I did not have time to think about a lot of things. And now that it's finally slowed down, like it's 45 out in DC today, it is wild how much thought and time needs to go into doing exactly kind of what you guys are doing. We're quite literally producing right now as a company a new type of truck that'll just reclaim water right as it goes down. So it'll clean, get sucked back up through filters, back through, constantly cleaning the same surfaces, retaining water. So in that type of situation, you're good to go. We're not going to have any flooding. We're not going to have any issues. A huge advantage again, but here's the deal. That equipment is like 40 grand, right? So like not everybody has the capital to pursue that. And because we're in a franchise, we're able to negotiate better leasing terms, purchasing power, and that kind of a thing that really gives us a huge advantage. Also, I did not have to sit there and figure out how the heck all that tubing and piping is going to work, whatever weird vacuums water creates. So there's this huge advantage where I don't have to spend my time on that, and I'm constantly working on the business as opposed to trying to figure out how the heck that pump works.
Yeah. And so what was the startup cost for that business whenever you first got in, and what is that today?
So it's $39,900 a territory. I started with 4 territories, and then I put, I
And you
think,
didn't
15
syndicate
down.
or borrow any of that. That was all your money, right? So you have no
My
investors.
money. Yeah,
Just
no
just do
investors,
100%
just my
ownership. Okay.
money. Just see how it goes,
You didn't
Nick.
really do a search. You
My
did
life
like an
wasn't
independent.
scary at all.
Yeah, you're more of an independent sponsor. You did it yourself. So
Yeah, wasn't terrifying. I remember I actually told the CEO, I was like, you better be the same dude after I sign this check than you were before. No surprises, please. I think it was about, so I had the 4 territories at 39.9, and then I had $20,000 down payment. And then we used to have this thing called a new business set, part of the thing that broke as we expanded. But the concept is it was a pool of money that would try to help you not think about your advertising and all this type of stuff to try and just give you a nice runway. Just it didn't work at scale.
That's what royalties are for. Shouldn't all that be going towards that? Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we ended up having is I think it's probably, what was I in, like 250, somewhere in there.
and what about the equipment?
Yeah, so it was part of the lease. So we leased it all through the truck. So the truck was leased through the equipment. There was, I think, like 30 or 40 grand where I bought stuff for the warehouse. I've got these 2,000-gallon water tank, a couple chemical tanks.
Got it. So you had kind of your
all
own
these different
knickknacks that
tables.
you had to take care of, but the franchisor helped obviously find the trucks, get you on a lease for those trucks, and kind of run from there. Okay. And
Yep.
and has that changed much 17 months later as the kind of the franchise kind of got its footing?
It has. The shirts, you guys, the shirts look like you were Count Dracula. They were terrible. It's the first thing I made fun of. The first yard sign that I got, you guys, was half the size of my couch. It was outrageously big. I was like, dude. And he was like, we didn't know. Yeah, our manufacturing capacity is actually quite literally the opposite of what it was now. The founders of the original company have taken over manufacturing. So they started their own company that coincides with ours. It's called Rolling Suds Products, but they now manufacture all of our trucks. They copy their setup that they've done for 20 years or 30 years. And then they're working on innovations. So this company that coincides with ours, it gives us special pricing, access to specialty chemicals, access to parts that are really hard to source, and then, replacements, advice on when something's going wrong, all those little nitty gritty things that you don't really want to worry about. So honestly, when you're in a panic equipment wise, there's always somebody who knows how to make this work again.
Got it. But in terms of startup and everything else, so if I want to be a brand new franchisee, it's roughly the same pricing. It hasn't changed significantly.
So I think it has. It's gone up. It's like 54,000 a territory, I think. And how they do the new business set, that whole thing is gone. And we've also found a much better way to get people started. So when you start with us now, we've got cold callers for you. We've got cold emailing. We have all these different vendors that we've set up and have really started to get people to $20,000 and $40,000 their first month. My first month, I think I made $7 grand.
And that was actually a good segue because I wanted to understand, what's kind of been revenues and what are margins? So, kind of where have you grown to today and how many employees are we talking about right now?
Sure. So I burned money. I just did in the first part of it. I was not familiar. I had never been in home services, didn't know how advertising worked. I also kept on employees and guaranteed them 40 hours a week for about 6 months. And my break even at the time was about 20 grand. And I got there in my second and third month. So I started to break even fairly quickly, which I was very proud of. And that's actually what got me excited is power washing slows down in the late October and is kind of dead on the residential side past November. So past Thanksgiving. I was breaking even. So the commercial model was working, which I thought was very exciting. So I ended up buying more territory in January so I could keep people out of Northern Virginia, the spots that I wanted. And then did one more where I was getting a lot of commercial business that I wanted to protect. So I have 6 territories. But in terms of how it goes for everyone else, they're much faster to profit and break even. They still kind of hover in the 20s and 40s. At the time, if we're talking about actual profit margins and where I am now versus then, I was breaking even and kind of just pushing everything back in the business. Nowadays, I would tell you that I actually just had my highest month at 138,000 in October and ended up working on a military base, which is my new claim to fame before and after photo because it's outrageous how good it is. But I was on an 80-foot man lift. So, apparently I'm not afraid of heights. But yeah, awesome. We did an awesome job. And we just it is wild how the longer you're in this, the amount of people are like, hey, I heard you did this thing. Can you do that here? And what's that cost?
Word of mouth is valuable.
And you're not limited, right? The franchise doesn't say, hey, these are the only things you can do. So it sounds like you're able to just expand your horizon and focus on that part of the business, finding new business.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that we really don't want to get into is window cleaning. I think I'm going to have some type of solution where instead of window cleaning, I'm window washing. And I'd like to have like an osmosis machine attached to the side of my truck. I want to offer it as an add-on. It's very interesting in this space how often people want good and not great, or they're okay with good and not great on some things. So, for example, I probably could have added $5,000 to that last big job that I talked about. The military base was 72,000 or so. I probably could have added $5,000 onto it if I could have just been like, hey, I'll make your windows a little bit better because we left them a little dirty. But I told you they were going to be dirty, so.
Yeah. So you're on track roughly, maybe 1.3 to 1.5 million of revenue, right? Annualized. Does that sound about right? Kind of where it is starting from 0 to that.
Yeah. If we're keeping
17 months, not too bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
And then I'm going to finish here about 800 for the calendar year. But the fun part about this is you can feel it. You can feel it growing. I found there's this one competitor that I know is just going to beat me up one day because I keep doing a way better job at about half the price.
You're having fun with this. I could tell just from your energy.
It's just one of those things where we're not friends, my dude, and I'm coming for you. And it is what it is. I hope you come for me too. Spend the money and see if you can do it.
And so you basically are closing out roughly 800. You're projecting, 1,500 or 1.5 over the next year. So you're really, you're doubling each year, right? That's kind of the growth rate right now.
I think that's very possible. What I've done, so I wasted a lot of money in 2024. Things that were broken that I didn't know how to fix. I now know how to fix them. Oh boy, did we make some mistakes. We killed an elevator on July 3rd. Great day to kill an elevator. One of my newest employee pushed some water into a garage and, it's what we have insurance for. And we've also marketing. I have tried literally everything I could find on the internet, X, Twitter, anything and everything that everybody said was good or bad I wanted to try. So I've had cold callers. I've got guys posting in Facebook groups for me. I'm in magazines. I wanted the idea of how I like to build things is a very strong foundation. I need my name out there. I need Rolling Suds out there. And I want these trucks running as much as possible.
Got it. So, yeah, so then and what's the margin typically?
Around 50%. And honestly, it's a good deal higher on a bunch of stuff. Yeah. I say all the time I love parking garages because my margin ends up being around 90% or so.
Yeah, no, and those kind of businesses, that's the beautiful thing. That's the beautiful thing of those kind of businesses, right? They are high margin. Now you do have to work hard to get the contracts. You have to manage a lot more people, but it's a nice high margin business, right? So Casey and I, we're in the wrong business. Plating business, not so high margin.
Well, it can be. It can be. It's just got a lot of other costs to it. So, Nick, one of the things when we were getting kicked off here, you started talking about that I thought was great, kind of as we're getting into wrapping it up. So, part of the reason why you're here is to mention that it's just not easy, right? This process. You make it sound fun. You're smiling, all this good stuff, right? But
Yeah.
what's the truth there?
The truth is that, man, is it mind numbing sometimes. There was a 2.5 week period where I was doing about 20 hours a day, 21 hours a day. Stuff happened. Somebody hired away employees right before a major contract hit, and I'm not going to lose the contract. So here we are. I'm out at 4 a.m, and I'm back at 12, 11:30, say hi to the dog, go to bed. And then I did it until I got sick and was able to hire somebody to replace me. But I've taken apart our pumps. My hands finally are not scabbed from, figuring out how all that type of stuff works. Had employees that were amazing turn into an absolute nightmare of a human overnight sometimes, which is a little jarring. People not showing up, customers not understanding, anything and everything that can go wrong.
How do you deal with it? How do you deal with it?
This isn't my first rodeo, but I have this cycle where I'm even. And this is true, the older I get, the more even I am. I try to stay even on everything, but I dip down, get upset, and then I quickly come back up. And I'm like, all right, cool. We're done with the pity party. How do we fix this? What's the next move?
Cool.
I call the franchise support, whatever it is. How do I do this? Let's fix it. Let's move on. And then try to do the right thing by everybody.
And I think the difference between a successful, I think the difference between a successful entrepreneur and a non-successful one is a person that adversity happens all the freaking time. I mean, day in, day out. It's about recognizing it, not slumping in it, right? And just quickly moving on and say, okay, here's where we are, whatever it is, right? And now here are my options, and evaluate them and make a decision and keep moving forward, right? Like, it's about constantly moving forward versus letting yourself stall out, because the stall out is really where, the thing that ends up killing you in a business. And so you have to be quick to address adversity and solve it and move forward, and not, stew in it too long.
Dude, I think that's life. I think anything you do, right? I have my daughter, she plays golf, right? Golf is the game that teaches you about all those things, right? If you're frustrated and upset, trust me, that ball is going to find the out of bounds marker quick. And I always call it the golf gods right now. And she's like, there is no golf god. And then I'm like, what? That was the golf god. But the point is, it's like these same things that apply to entrepreneurship apply to life. And it's finding that acceptance. It's stoicism, right? It's just understanding that anything and everything that's going to happen to you is going to happen. And the only things we can control is our attitude, actions, and emotions. Those are the things we can control.
Yep. I think that's obviously true, and the golf thing is 1000% true. But the hard part is and the reality is you're not going to do this well all the time. You're going to fail yourself at some point. At some point, this becomes a little bit too much. I can tell you the day it became too much, it was like August 2nd of this year. We switched how some stuff worked. I had a huge credit card bill. I'm waiting on money to come in. My AR is outrageous. Employees are bucking me, and they're mad, and it's hot. I was burnt. I kind of took a half week in Rehoboth, Delaware, came back, and we just pushed through it. And now we're kind of at the end. We're like, okay, thank God it's slowing down, because we all need a break. I have so many things I need to fix for how we move forward. I need rules to the road. I need standard operating procedures. I need to learn and figure out how to carry employees through this part of the year better, because I relied on myself a little bit too much. There's so many mistakes that I made, and I don't even view them as mistakes. It's just learning, like, if you're going to be successful at this, you just have to be cool with being wrong. And I think that speed beats being right sometimes, because you could be wrong twice and then right by the time somebody else makes a choice. And you've learned a lot of wisdom from that. And that's what I get upset about, and what we were talking about prior is the internet has taught everyone that you should have everything now, or that there's some class that you can take that'll make you great. And the only thing that's going to make you great is hanging in there with your emotions, making some solid choices, and, kind of powering through the stuff and just kind of keep going.
Well said, man. Well said. And congratulations on your journey, man. It's exciting.
We're gonna have to come bring you back on here another year and just see how it's progressing. See if you hit that 1.5. So
yeah, I'm excited. Adding capacity. I'm fascinated to how I'm going to handle. So the amount of employees I had at my peak was about 10. So we do overnight services for shopping centers. I'm going to have another 4 or 5, and I have the guy in place that I want to manage everybody. But oh boy,
awesome.
You never know what it looks like till you turn that bad boy back on in the spring. And so I'm going to go, to the beach over New Year's. I'm going to go ski with my friends for a month, and then I'll be back into full battleship mode, getting ready, preparing our processes and making sure that we tighten up all the things that I wish we had tightened up or had tightened up as we were going through those problems.
Hey, great story, man.
That's the power of experience.
For your journey. All right. So this is the part where we move on to our rocket round. We're going to ask our guest 3 questions. So let's jump into it.
All right. First question. What do you like to do in your free time?
Oh, I'm huge into working out, and I'm also really big into golf, and I play a lot of co-rec sports. So Thursday nights, you'll see my schedule pretty clear. Play softball on the National Mall in DC, and kickball, flag football, beach volleyball. I'm just super competitive. And then golf, of course, golf. And you're the most perfect answer. If you are upset at all, that bad boy is showing up when you golf. There's no chance. Just accept that you're not going to be good that day, and have a beer or two. Is probably what we're looking at.
One of these days I'll learn golf, and now I know if I'm going to go hang out with you in DC, not to come out on a Thursday. So,
all right. Your most memorable moment in your business journey.
Yeah, in April of this year, I had been pitching somebody almost all winter to do 19 shopping centers overnight. Guy's not the most communicative guy in the world, and then he called to tell me I got it. Nice. And that was $120,000 a year worth. We signed for 2 years, so I'll still have it next year. That's a foundation.
Yeah.
That's a labor stabilizer. That allowed me to make mistakes at a much higher rate than other people can make them without burning an insane amount of capital, right? So I have $16,000, $17,000 coming in every month. If I layer it correctly with payroll and other jobs, I've got a nice little margin there where I can mess with marketing. I can mess with my employee count. I can do a whole bunch of cool things that I would have been afraid to do, is the honest answer. I wouldn't have pulled the trigger on everything that I did.
And last question, what's your favorite tool or resource?
My favorite tool or resource, I'm going to go with what we talk. It is Twitter and X, but not for necessarily the reasons that I think. I see a lot of people on there who love to talk these huge games. My favorite thing about business owners is that the ones that are successful suddenly have gained knowledge in 19 different areas, and they're always right. And the smartest people that I've ever met have always said they don't know. And they would get back to me, or they give me a book on the subject or whatever. And the people who didn't know or are very honest on there have become invaluable resources. And I ignore the rest.
Yeah.
But that's been able to build up my network in the real life and use that as a tool to kind of reference back. I think it's just a great networking opportunity.
And the way I look at it a lot of times too is, I'm just as guilty of this, is the people that are actually out there getting shit done typically, don't have the time to be so hyperactive on Twitter or X, right? And so you kind of have to, depending on the person, there's some grain of salt to some of that.
So Nick, parting words for our guest. A lot of people are looking to make the leap in their life. They're searching, thinking about a franchise. What's your word of advice?
Yeah. My word of advice is do what feels right, but ask a lot of questions. I think you should go with your gut more often than not when you're making big decisions, but the financial models that you can make, whatever. It's not all that important. I think you have to ask people hard questions on why they're doing well or why people aren't doing well, especially in a franchise type situation. The people who tend to follow the models do decently well, and the people who try to buck it don't. And so I think my general advice would be is just make sure you understand who you're getting into a partnership with, whether that's a franchisor or a franchisee. And like, would you let them watch your kids? Would you let them run your business? Would you let them handle your bank account? Like, because that's at the end of the day, they have a lot of control over those things. And just remember that everything that is worthwhile takes a lot of time to get right and run and be at the place that you want it to. Absolutely nothing worthwhile happens overnight unless you won the lottery, and God bless you. It's like getting good at golf, right? You're going to try, you'll have your bad days, you'll have your good days, but you still want to go out and do it. And you just kind of have to make sure that that's where you're at with what you want to do. Do you still want to do this when everything goes wrong? And make sure that you understand your downside risk, and always hire an attorney.
That's always a true one.
Advice, man.
And maybe last question, how can people get a hold of you?
Yes, you can find me on, I'm not going to call it X, Twitter at Hokie Heye, HOKIEHEYE, or search Nick Heye, and then I'm on Instagram. And you may shoot me an email if you'd like, nick.heye@rollingsuds.com. Happy to talk about Rolling Suds, franchising, entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. Can never have enough friends. Just give me some time to respond.
Perfect. All right.
Nick, man, great story. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us, man. And I'm excited about your journey, and we're looking forward to getting you back and hearing an update, how things are going.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.